If you can crack the code of nuclear waste and unleash a realm of possibilities, you've solved something that no one has attempted to do before and has succeeded.
We started doing extensive research into nuclear and the entire industry. And why are we downblending billions of dollars worth of material? We should be using it.
We will only have about 4% of the remaining waste that you started with. We have the U.S. government partnered with us now to prove our technology out with the 4 leading nuclear and technology labs to demonstrate our technology by the end of 2025.
There is a sense of excitement. There's a constant sense of wonder. This technology is unique. We believe that it has the potential to answer these questions, to commercialize used nuclear fuel recycling in the United States.
200 back down.
We're onto something big.
3. I got a friggin' B.
We all want a better future.
I want to provide limitless energy to the world.
First time that I came to Washington, D.C., and why I was so attracted to this place is because it exemplifies that like American imperialism. And American imperialism, you know, obviously has gotten a bad rap with all of the foreign wars that we fought in the last 2 decades. And we grew up in wars, and we grew up how America was basically trying to exert its power through conflict. That's not what President Eisenhower and Atoms for Peace envisioned. He envisioned a world where the United States, through its vast natural resources, through its technological capabilities, will be able to power, be able to sustain, be able to build and feed the world. We need to go back to those basics of, and that post-World War II era, we were said, okay, that was gonna be the war to end all wars, and we were going to rebuild the world and we wanted to reach the stars. You know, that was when the Jetsons was invented, right? They had that vision of just robots and you know, like food being made for you inside like some sort of like microwave, right? Like just like pop out the meal, right? We don't have that, and we want that. That's the thing. We all want that. We all want a better future. And I believe that nuclear energy and unlocking that true potential of the atom really is the stepping stone to that future.
Well, let's talk about nuclear energy. I'm privileged to represent the Oak Ridge Reservation. Oak Ridge is a wonderful town in East Tennessee. It's the birthplace of the Manhattan Project. Some of those legacy buildings are still there. So if we talk about Oppenheimer, if we talk about Einstein, if we talk about General Groves, the Manhattan Project was birthed in Oak Ridge, a great historical story and legacy. After World War II, and then moving into the Cold War, Oak Ridge did a lot of different things. It had Atoms for Peace, where President Eisenhower came up with the idea that we wanted a peaceful use of nuclear technologies.
The Manhattan Project was pivotal in the sense that it birthed technologies that are today still fairly awesome. Things, industrial processes grew out of it. You know, Star Wars everything grew out of the Manhattan Project.
Yeah, once upon a time in the 1950s and 60s, you had My Friend the Atom with Disney. Disney was planning to build, as I understand it, a nuclear reactor for a power source.
The atom is our future. It is a subject everyone wants to understand. So we felt it was the most important topic for a Tomorrowland program. In fact, we considered it so important that we embarked on several atomic projects. For one, we made plans to build an exhibit at Disneyland that will show you atomic energy in action.
There was a time where nuclear did not have a scarlet letter in the United States, and there are countries where nuclear has never undergone that scarlet letter effect. But in the U.S., the reputation of a particular sector dramatically changed, including in the public sector, from positive, if not exciting, about the future, to incredibly negative, and it became pervasive.
It was the first step in a nuclear nightmare. As far as we know at this hour, no worse than that. But a government official said that a breakdown in an atomic power plant in Pennsylvania today is probably the worst nuclear reactor accident to date.
They would have missed the brief and buried report of the biggest nuclear accident in history, an accident that had occurred at least 2 days earlier at Chernobyl in the Ukraine. A plume of radioactivity appears to have passed over an area largely covered by forest. Considerable controversy has followed in the plume's wake, even among some of the Soviets' Eastern Bloc clients, where precautionary steps were taken.
The nuclear energy sector continues to play a vital role in society in so many ways, saving lives and fighting cancer, food safety, to electricity non-carbon emitting. And, there are some of the reasons really were, I would say, competitive between different sectors. Back in the 70s, I think it's fair to say that the coal industry saw us as the greatest threat to their market as baseload power, and we were growing. We were on track to have 1,000 reactors.
The older, larger nuclear plants, many of which are still in operation, many of which have long outlived their projected livelihood, are doing a good job. President Carter in the 80s made a decision to move away from reprocessing. Their concern was a non-proliferation risk. During the process, even the French process, which is safe and efficient and proven, they produce 1% pure plutonium in that process. France is a nuclear power. The United States is a nuclear power. There's 9 or 10 nuclear powers in the world, depending on whom you speak with. The reality is that they are responsible. They could manage that. We can certainly manage that.
So in the past, processing has been aqueous processing. So you dissolve all of the fuel in acid, and that creates huge amounts of wastes.
So what they do is they take fuel in the form of uranium oxide, which has been in a reactor. Inside of this fuel, there is plutonium, neptunium, there's a bunch of fission products, virtually half of the periodic table that is formed. It's in there, it's radioactive. They take the stuff, they dissolve it into a bath, a very large bath of nitric acid, and then process it. They dissolve into kerosene, and then you have a vat of nitric acid in which you've dissolved all of this used nuclear fuel. So now you take this oil, kerosene containing this getter, and you take this liquid water, aqueous medium, with the nitric acid containing all of this uranium, plutonium, and the fission products, and then you just, smash these two unimmiscible liquids against each other. And in the process of that, small bubbles form, they start, colliding against each other. In that process, the uranium and plutonium specifically transfer over from the aqueous phase into this organic phase. That is the way recycling is practiced today. A couple of the drawbacks that they have there is the formation of pure plutonium, which is a problem, which is one of the main reasons why the United States, even though we invented this technology, we've unilaterally abandoned it since the late 70s. The other thing is the fact that you utilize these organic molecules, which have covalent bonds and not more radiation-resistant bonds, let's say like an ionic bond. And as a result, the organic material will simply degrade. The more you use it, the more it'll degrade over time. And so that requires further treatment and cleanup of this degraded material.
You got these gigantic, slushy, nasty things where you can have all sorts of crazy accidents happen. And even if the accidents don't hurt anybody, they just spoil the landscape. So you go to Battelle, Northwest, you take a look at these nuclear waste dumps. I mean, it's just It's gross. It's like the mining people, they go and they despoil the land, they get their coal, they get their metals, and they just leave.
Nuclear waste has been kind of a hang-up for people. I hear this a lot. They'll say, like, what about the waste? And if you look at the waste in terms of a safety perspective, it's not really an issue. No one's had any exposure to this at any point in time. But the way we've been handling this in the US, it's been a major issue.
So, as you can see from here,
I spent my whole career in nuclear, and we are leaving not only a generational, incredible problem that could have been resolved in the nuclear waste problem, but we're leaving civilization with that. When you're talking about having this material for 100,000 years or 1,000,000 years where it's not safe for people to be around, that's mind-boggling, and that gave me great regret. I just felt like, why on earth can't we know how to do this. There's no good rational reason.
Just like, how is this going to happen? We don't have enough energy. So I turned to my brother. I was like, we really should get into the nuclear energy space. And he's like, okay, and what does that mean? I was like, I don't know. We'll have to figure it out.
There's so much that can be done to build up the economy and make a difference.
So it's kind of weak.
You could learn where the innovation is growing, where there's lack of innovation, where there's no competition, where what the government is looking for. And we're like, okay, we're patriotic capitalists. Why is it being downblended? We created it. It's supposedly very, very rare material that we're not producing anymore, or very small quantities of it. And why are we downblending billions of dollars worth of material? We should be using it.
Nuclear needs to triple globally. We have about 440 nuclear reactors around the world. To triple that by 2050 or 2052 is going to take a Herculean effort. It's really going to take, and the U.S. nuclear sector in particular as a leader, to really take a step back and ask ourselves, what is it going to take to dramatically scale up nuclear in order to meet this existential threat by many in their view? And if we don't recycle, if we don't address the so-called nuclear waste problem, I don't think we get there.
We're using more. We definitely, I think, as globally, we will be using more. I mean, and unless our standard of living, unless we're going to take everyone down or backwards, we're going to continue to use energy. I think there's no question in that. And so it all comes down to how do we get that energy, and how do we do it in a way that's going to be most environmentally friendly, and how do we make sure that we're not, just doing something that we're handing to our kids or grandkids to take care of down the road. So nuclear is definitely a big piece of that.
A 12-inch diameter, and this is the argon, so material would come through the cast. Well, nuclear, as it's being used right now globally, is a base load. And that's what it is, because it's available 24/7. It doesn't depend on weather. It doesn't depend on the sun. It doesn't depend on tidal. It's not a seasonal aspect. But it's different than the other base load, which is carbon fuel, because it's clean. So basically, it's a better option for base load. And now the limitation that's being addressed universally is the small modular aspect of it. Normally, it's located at the large regional centralized areas, but with the modular aspect, it's opening doors across the board. And now we need to combine the modular aspect, the base load, with the recycling aspect of it. But I think it's not so much dwelling on could it have been done sooner, but we're doing it now. and really focus on the positives, what we're doing, learn from the past, and we always learn from other mistakes.
There are some truly innovative twists that no one's ever looked at before. Salt reactors are a big emphasis right now. Just in the last maybe 6 months, there's been an interest again in recycling. I'd say a broader interest in recycling, that we're hearing a lot more interest from Congress, from external entities, private entities as well. But between some of these innovative reactor concepts and then the renewed interest in recycling, I say those are the two things that are really kind of driving the resurgence, at least that we see here at this laboratory.
Nuclear, it's nice to talk about renewables, and renewables are fine, but renewables don't work on a as needed basis. They're not baseload power. Baseload power is available 24/7. Windmills are not. Solar is not. They're great but you need a solid base. And coal is clearly not the way to go. Gas is not the way to go. Nuclear is the way to go.
One reason is the nuclear energy sector, certainly in the U.S., is the largest non-carbon emitting electricity source by far. It is second largest globally, I believe, only second to hydropower.
Looking at the full life cycle costs of all of alternative energy sources, as you said, wind turbines, you throw these huge wind turbines in the ground, they don't really decompose. They're like carbon fiber, and they just kind of remain there.
There's no real process or mechanism to recycle these blades. And so once they reach their usable life, we're seeing more of these, I like to call them turbine graveyards, popping up.
And same with solar panels, they don't really decompose. So there are issues. I think people really need to look at the life cycle costs of these alternate energy sources and really make a better comparison with nuclear. And I think nuclear will really shine when they do that. Proven, effective, 24/7, 365. So, wind and solar, great, but they're going to need some kind of base load. And, if we can really make nuclear efficient and low cost, then that would be great. That would solve a lot of problems.
So there have been multiple factors why it's taken so long for the federal government to dispose. And Congress passed a law in the 1980s saying the U.S. Department of Energy shall collect that material that's sitting on pads around the country at U.S. utilities, almost all of them private, and start taking that material in 1998. But where are you going to take it?
Historically, based on studies from back in the 50s, is to directly dispose of this material geologically, which is to say dig a hole deep enough somewhere and throw it in there and provide assurance that this radioactive material will not leak out and will not start transporting in the various environmental pathways that become available to it. Where in 1998, this used nuclear fuel was supposed to be started to be picked up here in the United States for disposal, is 2024, and that is very far from being a reality today.
And so it was really fascinating for me to find that not only do we have solutions, that we have all this material that people just think as waste, and it has so much energy in it. And it was actually a little frustrating to find out that we have so much good solutions out there, but just really for political reasons, for nothing else. And again, I work very closely on the Hill as well too, so I've been able to see that side as well. And really, while there's a lot of support politically and elsewhere, and I think now more than ever there's more of a push towards nuclear, there's still such hesitation, and it doesn't make any sense, because if you can solve what's the downside to being able to solve energy issues?
What do we do with spent nuclear fuel? Let's be candid. Yucca Mountain is the law. Let's be candid. Yucca Mountain will not happen. Okay, as long as Nevada continues to be a viable state politically, nationally, in presidential and national elections, Yucca Mountain's not going to happen. So we need to come up with something else.
This material has been fenced off over decades and decades. Now we have the political alignment where both sides of the aisle see nuclear as key to deal with existential threats.
That means that legacy wastes were left in communities, sometimes in the soil, sometimes in the water, sometimes in facilities. And what that means is that the federal government has a duty to these communities to clean this waste up.
One of the themes of our nuclear policy work, reflected in the bipartisan letter we wrote in April, is to restore agency alignment with the policy goals of the Atomic Energy Act. These policies, I think, it is fair to argue, helped the United States for several decades lead the world in nuclear technology to spread the peaceful benefits of nuclear power. We want to recapture the focus of these policies going forward.
So we have a unique moment to once and for all allow an innovative company to, I believe, Teslafy or SpaceXify the nuclear market. It is ready to be transformed.
Congress can really damper innovation and really damper private businesses, but then Congress also has the ability to really sustain and make the private industry flourish, especially with innovative technology like Curio.
So it's not the old, well, us building something versus the environment. It's us building something in a way that's environmentally friendly and workable and profitable.
And that's what we founded Curio, because that we said we have to figure out a way to solve the nuclear waste problem, because that is the albatross around the neck of the entire nuclear sector, and really holding back that second nuclear era that every single one of us wants. And some of us know that we want it, others don't know that we want it, and that's because there's just been this massive effort to discredit nuclear energy. The good news is that there's been this resurgence, right? And we're seeing this transpartisan effort to try to kind of legitimize it. You see in COP28, there's big efforts to now triple net our nuclear energy capacity, that 300 gigawatts that we have. We have now 100 gigawatts in the US. We want to triple it. We want to triple the capacity in the globe. The question is it dead on arrival?
And so what we would like to do is figure out how you could recycle spent fuel without generating all that waste.
Interesting thing about nuclear is you can recycle everything that's been in the nuclear reactor. Just recycle it.
What we're doing is we're treating EBR2 fuel. It was demonstrated the complete fuel cycle loop back in the 60s, and then this fuel was put in storage, and we're trying to treat it right now. Burying it directly would not represent a good environmental stewardship position. So one, we're trying to treat it in terms of the sodium components in there. Two, we're turning it into a useful product over the last 5 years. And I think it's the cusp of recycling, which clearly is an advent for plastics and newspaper, but now we're growing the technology to the next form of energy. We've got a lot of recyclable energies in the country in terms of tidal, hydro, solar, so forth and so on. Nuclear is the next step.
Yeah, this is a very fundamental sort of type of chemistry where you're looking at how things behave, how chemistry behaves mostly. And in this world, there's a different piece of that. There's nuclear chemistry as well as chemistry, and they have different physics than you learn initially in school. That is, nuclear chemistry is quite different. For things that are chemically similar on the outside, but insides are very different. It sounds like humans, yeah? So there are, like, I think for silicon, the element silicon 22 isotopes, they have different physical behaviors, all of them. And uranium, the one we're playing with in this project a lot, it's got several isotopes. We're only interested in 2, and you can separate those nowadays. And so that is, they're chemically the same. And so the way to separation the uranium from something other material, the chemistry, is straightforward. But to separate those isotopes of, in this case, it would be uranium-235 and uranium-238. To separate those are very special technologies that are only invented as late as 1940. Here in the United States. So those are the isotope U-235 is very special. It's a very special technology. that we've developed and developed more over time.
So fluorine is a very reactive gas. If you mix it with spent fuel, almost all of the components of the spent fuel will become fluorides. That allows you to separate those components, and that's really the key is separating those out.
Chemical reactions can go two ways, right? They could be as slow as rusting, or they could be as fast as dynamite, right? And we don't want either. We want something in between. So we're playing around with things on the hundreds of grams scale, cold, meaning using simulant materials. However, it will give us a lot of insight into how the chemistry actually works, how the kinetics of the chemistry work. Over the last couple of years, we have been developing our chemistry at the laboratory scale. And then the goal is to then take what we've then learned and start scaling up, again, using cold materials. This time we will, instead of doing lab scale or bench scale where you're using hundreds of grams of material, we'll go up to what we'll call pilot scale, where the equipment will be the size of a person, about 6 feet tall, about 2 or 3 feet wide. And every batch would have about 30 to 50 kilograms of material. And then at that scale, we'll start really getting much, much closer to the scale at which we'd want to deploy this.
So you're building it in a lab, is X amount of dollars, and then you scale up to a pilot, that's X amount. You're not going from a paper design to a full-scale $5 billion facility, right?
We believe that it has the potential to answer these questions, to essentially commercialize used nuclear fuel recycling in the United States.
By the way, there are a lot of other very valuable medical, industrial, and space-based power isotopes now resident in there as a result of that fissioning process, what you can't get anywhere else at scale.
So you gotta somehow get these radioisotopes that you need for space, for medicine, for industrial uses somewhere. And this is an opportunity to get it from the obvious place, that's where it is. Besides why you rob banks, right? This is sitting there, use it, get it to people for the benefit of mankind, and at writ large, it makes some money.
Medical isotopes. It just fit. It still does today. Oak Ridge produces some of the most critical nuclear isotopes in the world for medicine, for manufacturing, for defense industry. As a matter of fact, in some instances, it's the only source of several of these key isotopes outside of Russia. So really that heightens the need for what we do.
We can get a triple benefit of recycling and reducing that waste so it's not passed on to our next generation in civilization, extract products that are incredibly important for our energy security, our medical isotope needs, our industrial space-based, and also serve as a technical world-class hub wherever we site our facilities.
Legacy cleanup is something I lead on all over the United States. Oak Ridge, Savannah River, Los Alamos, Hanford, Washington. These are sites that from the Cold War and before, the Manhattan Era Project had legacy sites, specifically sites that needed to be cleaned up for the communities. We want to protect watersheds, we want to protect the soil, we want to protect the environment. We are cleaning this up. It's one of the areas where Republicans and Democrats, members of the House, members of the Senate, and through 3 administrations, we worked hand in hand to do that. Where is their great agreement? On new nuclear. These will be smaller nuclear power plants with safe fuels, with safe constructions, easier to build, easier to get licensed through the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, with the goal of 100% clean energy. We do not get to our clean energy goals without nuclear and without new nuclear.
That waste reduction and that higher efficiency and closing the nuclear cycle for real is a game changer. And that comes with both recycling and the fast reactors together. And at Curio, we are able to realize both of them.
This is something that takes a lot of people, a lot of time to do, but it makes a big impact when it's there.
New Cycle works by adopting some of these methodologies, improving on them, proposing state-of-the-art changes that will hopefully improve both the non-proliferation aspects and the economics of the process.
We will only have about 4% of the remaining waste that you started with instead of 100% that you're trying to throw away. And on top of it, when you recycle that material, we will only need to have it securely stored for about 300 years. Much smaller amount, 300 years. 300 years sounds like a lot, but right now the U.S. Nuclear Regulatory Commission has a requirement. The material right now that comes out of the reactor, after 4 to 5 years, unrecycled, it's at its arguably its highest level of radiotoxicity, and literally unrecycled, that material, the NRC says they want to see that the material can be, and they have a requirement that the material is securely disposed of over 1 million years. 1 million years. How on earth can you do that? It's not credible. So we know how to do this. We've reprocessed in the past. Our company is just bringing the best of the best, modular, autonomy.
From the very beginning, the concept is to have something that is small, something that is modular. It makes it a lot easier to, at least for me too, like to design, because I'm like, okay, I can kind of understand the scale of what this is supposed to be. Like if a human is standing next to it, I understand this is how big it's supposed to be, this is how much space it's supposed to take up, things like that.
I can express how great is nuclear. I can say that like with the famous quote that nuclear energy used to use, this is like almost the size of a nuclear pellet. And for regarding the uranium at that size as a pellet, different chemical compound form of it, is almost equal to more than a ton of coal. More than 1 ton of coal. And then, how great is it? The size of this cup is enough to show the amount of the uranium that a person can use for the energy for that person's entire life. And this is with the current nuclear reactors. And if you are able to turn it to advanced reactors, then the amount of the water within that would be enough for that.
This is clean. What you do is you have 5% left that you have to deal with, but that's a huge shrink from the 95% that people complain about now. So you take that and you say, okay, this 5% is not useful. We have to protect it for a reasonable amount of time. And the other stuff, let's go, let's use it.
Because of a lack of availability of so-called HALEU. And these facilities that are around the country, we have 93 nuclear reactors operating right now. These facilities operate now 60 years on average, some as long as 80 years. Our recycling facility, we estimate we will need about 3,000 full-time job. And these jobs are paying between $80,000 to $125,000 to $130,000 a year. This is including individuals that are working in security, working with a high school degree and well trained up, 2-year associates. And this is a facility that will last at least 60 years. So these facilities, whether it's nuclear reactors or recycling or others, they offer a generational underpinning, stability, and a source of strong, economic basis and great career jobs, and we're very proud of that in the industry. What's the threshold for that? And we're always taking the conservative threshold.
I see how investors are not willing to take risk, and that's a problem, and it's slowing down innovation in the United States. And I see other countries are taking risks and are innovating, and the United States is falling behind.
At the end of the day, you have to ask yourself, everybody has like that why do they do things? And I think that it's like so important to really have a vision for what you want to achieve in this world. And you could always ask yourself, what if I fail? But if you don't actually try, you will never know what happened and what could have been.
You have the U.S. government partnered with us now to prove our technology out. Right now, as we speak, with 4 national labs, the 4 leading nuclear and technology labs in our specific technology areas, partnered with us, with the federal government all in, to demonstrate our technology by the end of 2025. We're already looking at sites to scale up further. And that line of sight to get into the commercial market and once and for all recycle at scale all of the used nuclear fuel that's sitting around the pads, different reactors around the country, stranded, nowhere to go. Our facility is unique among the industry, even those trying to get into the market. Ours is the only one that has the throughput that we do. 4,000 metric tons a year this facility will do. The entire global recycling reprocessing capacity is less than 3,000.
If you can crack the code of nuclear waste and unleash a realm of possibilities, you've solved something that no one has attempted to do before and has succeeded. And if you do it from a private sector perspective, where you bring value and you open up new markets and you take that free enterprise type of approach to developing this technology, obviously in partnership with important stakeholders like the Department of Energy, with ARPA-E, with the Office of Nuclear Energy Game Program, national labs, and you create this sort of like new national movement where there is this wide spectrum of stakeholders that is able to tackle this problem, suddenly you bring back hope. And that's why we call our reactor Hope, because that there's that hope for humanity, because the whole entire reactor exists because that we're going to be able to recycle the nuclear fuel.
The best part I like about it is the challenge. You know, we're onto something big with our focus on the nuclear fuel recycling and something that's never been done before from the private sector to actually commercialize a product like that. And that's to come down in history to actually accomplish that will be huge. That'll be amazing to be part of that.
There is a sense of excitement. There's a constant sense of wonder. There's a constant sense of, what is Mother Nature going to show us? You know, is she going to allow us to pursue a particular path? Is a certain type of chemistry feasible? I can only hope that maybe 6 to 8 years from now we have another interview like this, and at that time I can tell you that this problem is not being solved, it is solved.
Energy is the lifeblood here. We're working on it. We're making it better. We're going to make it better for ourselves, our children, and next generations. That's why I do it.
I mean, I have 5 kids at home, and I look at the future like what's the future for my kids, right? And nuclear has to be a part of that. I don't see another way for them to have the standard of living that they have now or have that increase.
I want to provide limitless energy to the world, and I believe this is the path through which we have to walk before we can get there.
We're definitely helping the world, and helping, especially to focus on the United States and make it a better place. If you make America stronger and a leader in the world, then maybe other countries will follow. But even if they don't, at least there's a place with freedom and economic growth and opportunity.
It's not about if, it's about when. And if you really push and you really persevere, what we've been able to accomplish, thank God, in the last 3 or so years is way above and beyond what others in the industry have not accomplished in 10. So if we keep up this timeline, we will achieve what they will achieve in 30 and 10. So we'll actually build something before the end of the decade. And that's the goal. And I believe that folks who are going to learn about this story of Curio and how it was essentially the second Manhattan Project and how, it was conceptualized by a rabbi is going to make a good story someday.